I'm Anderson Hurst. We're going to react to all 6 of the would have been impending free agents from the Seattle Seahawks in 2026.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Turbo Robert Turbin, and it has been payday the last couple of days of free agency.
Seahawks fans, it might seem like the defending champs are having their carcass picked apart, but I assure you, the Seahawks are not dead here in free agency.
And I'm Rob Rang, and as Corbin just mentioned, I think the Seahawks actually brought back the best athlete of the bunch in Rashid Shaheed.
Hey 12, it's the Seahawks squad. Everything Seattle Seahawks every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Emerald City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Get loud, 12s. The Seahawks Squad Show starts now.
What up, 12 Seahawks fans? It is officially free agent frenzy season. We kind of leading into the last couple weeks of, it's technically not even open yet, but everyone knows where they're signing. As of now, the 6 kind of major pending free agents for the Seattle Seahawks: Riq Woolen, Kenneth Walker, Rashid Shaheed, Boye Mafe, Josh Jobe, and Kobe Bryant. We've gone all the way into which ones we wanted to keep, kind of speculated about how much they would get on the open market. Well, all 6 of those guys have now signed, whether it's with the Seahawks or whether it is elsewhere. So I want to get a full squad show of just all-out reaction to whether they're coming back in Rashid Shaheed and Josh Jobe's case, or for the others, whether they're moving on, whether it was the right move. Whether if they are moving on, you would have signed that exact same contract in Seattle. All of the reaction here in a full hour-long episode of the Seahawks Squad Show. But first, let's get a general thought. We'll start with Turbo. I usually like to go with, if the first one to join the studio before we go live, they get to have the first word here. Turbo was early, so props to him there. Turbo, overall, how do you feel? You bring back 2 of the 6 guys. Do you feel the same way as what I heard Corbin and Rob, that it's kind of like, hey, no alarm bells here. We're all good. Do you feel the same way about, losing 4 pretty key pieces from a Super Bowl winning team?
Well, first of all, I appreciate that shout out. Usually I'm on CPT. All right. If you don't know what that means, you ask Chat GPT what it means if you don't know what I'm talking about. CPT. Okay, that's first of all. Second of all, I like the 4 square, man. I mean, it just looks nice and decent and neat and clean. I don't know what's going on in the background over there with Corbin, but it looks nice and decent and clean. I'm just playing with the nice 4 square. I feel like the 4 horsemen on the show today. But to answer your actual question, Anders, I think the Seahawks made great moves for the football team. I thought they made the best choices in terms of who they kept, who they let go away. Of course, you would like to see, some guys be able to come back to the team and be a part of, the future of the direction Seattle's going. But it just doesn't happen that way when you have a salary cap and you have to manage the money and you got to make tough decisions on really good players. But the guys that Seattle was able to acquire and bring back, I think, are perfect in terms of where they're headed in their future.
Yeah, very centered viewpoint from a former player, which, gotta say, props to that, Turbo, because not a lot of former players will have that perspective. So well done, sir. Corbin Smith, what do you think overall? Did they make the right moves here?
Yeah, I think they did, and I think John Schneider is playing this out perfectly because they're not in a position where they need to spend, no offense to Boye Mafe, they're not in a position they need to spend $20 million a year on a guy that had 2 sacks last year and 4 quarterback hits. Like, other teams are in a position where, hey, we're trying to become relevant. We need to go find talent and hope we can, get some untapped production out of some of these guys, and we're going to pay more to get that. John Schneider's not in that position. I mean, they still have most of their starters on both sides of the football, and the positions that they have lost are arguably the biggest strengths in this draft class, other than offensive tackle. I mean, corner and safety are two very deep positions. Running back, I don't think is near what it was last year, but there's still some pretty darn good players in this draft. I think Seattle can go get a running back in this draft class. And the other loss that they had away from the corner and safety, the edge position is really good. There's a lot of depth there, and that could be somewhere they look at pick 32 with some late first round talent that may still be on the board there for them. So I think John Schneider has set this up well. They keep the guys that they were going to have a tougher time replacing or that were more integral to their plans moving forward. And the players that outprice themselves, they're all positioned that they feel really good about that they can attack in the draft or in free agency with cheaper players that can come close to filling that void.
Yeah, Rob, I think just optics wise, after you win the Super Bowl and all like four pretty, like I don't want to say big contributors, but almost every down players on their specific side of the ball are moving on. And it seems like kind of Corbin mentioned in the open there, like the carcass is getting picked at here. Are there alarm bells ringing for you?
There are not. I understand why for a lot of Seahawks fans that there are some alarm bells going off. I mean, my goodness, you just lost the Super Bowl MVP. You have, as I mentioned in the opening of the show, I think that the Seahawks brought back the most dynamic athlete in Rashid Shaheed. But if you just want to look at combine numbers, Riq Woolen is that guy.
Yeah.
For a team that likes to, talk about getting to the quarterback and Boye Mafe, while he only had the 2 sacks, as Corbin mentioned. I mean, if you look at his pass rush win rate on Pro Football Focus, the way so many people do, then he was among the top 10 most productive pass rushers a year ago. So you can't say on one side of your mouth that this is a priority and then allow him to go. And then, of course, Kobe Bryant, who is the player that if you kind of forced me to say who do I think the Seahawks might actually miss the most, I think that you can make a strong argument for Kobe Bryant. So again, I think that Seattle lost really good players, but that's just the reality. If you win a Super Bowl and you're going to play that Super Bowl tax, as people like to characterize it, the player or NFL teams out there are going to try to poach some of the players that you just won the Super Bowl on. They want to kind of tout themselves, pat themselves on the back, and tell their fan bases, look who we just got. We're going to win the Super Bowl next because we got their MVP. We got their most athletic cornerback or their quickest pass rusher, whatever the case might be. I was fully expecting Seattle to bring back one of their 3 members of the secondary. I think that they got maybe the cleanest fit in Mike Macdonald's defense back on a relatively palatable salary rate in Josh Jobe. To get Rashid Shaheed back, who his speed just gives the offense a different level. It was a runner, as a receiver. Obviously, he didn't score a touchdown as a receiver or as a runner for the Seahawks this past season. But the threat that he provided, I think, also created some of the opportunities for Jackson Smith-Njigba, Cooper Kupp, those tight ends to kind of just splash. And then obviously his special teams. I mean, he's the most dynamic special teams player in all of the NFL, at least in my opinion. So while the $17 million per season average feels a little high to me, at the same time, that's just the way that the NFL is right now. I mean, the guys that have that kind of playmaking ability are going to get paid. And so I think the Seahawks fans should be pretty excited about the fact that they brought in these players because, as we just mentioned, a lot of the players that they lost are actually positions of relative strength in this draft class. And that is the one thing I feel very, very confident about is John Schneider and his scouts are going to be able to pick apart the carcass of the 2026 draft, as well as any general manager in all of the NFL.
Yeah, it seems overall there's a relative sense of calm down. We're good. We got this taken care of. In John and in Mike Macdonald we trust. I just think it's interesting. I don't know what you guys take from this, but of the 6 guys that we're listing out here, the 2 guys that were acquired during Mike Macdonald's tenure are the 2 guys that they're bringing back. Everyone else is gone. So I don't know, Corbin, I see you're nodding your head. I don't know if that's a Mike McDonald thing. He wants his guys, and he's kind of turning the page even more so than he has before. Corbin, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely the case, because if Pete Carroll was still coach, Riq Woolen would be in a Seahawks uniform.
Yeah.
Like there's no question in my mind, if Pete Carroll was still coach, Riq Woolen was everything he wanted at the cornerback position, with his length, his athleticism, the upside, and just personality-wise, I think it meshed better. Scheme-wise, it meshed better. Josh Jobe, though, is a Mike McDonald player. That is the prototypical corner he wants. He might not be the fastest. He might not be the biggest guy, but he's technically sound. He's a nasty press cover corner. He likes to press guys into oblivion. He likes to come up and hit in the run game. And the story, Mike McDonald loves those guys that are scrappy, that kind of came out of nowhere and made themselves quality starters. So I'm not surprised that the two guys that came over during his tenure, and look, Kobe Bryant was the other one they were really trying to get done. And ultimately, Sunday night, that last offer just wasn't good enough for Bryant to not test free agency. The Bears paid him more than John Schneider was going to. That happens. And that's just the way free agency goes.
Yep, exactly. So let's start with Riq. Before, let's go down the whole list. So Riq Woolen, just a few hours ago, signs a 1-year, $15 million deal with the Philadelphia Eagles. So my first reaction to this, guys, you can tell me if I'm wrong. It seems like a lot of money to be a prove-it deal, but it's a 1-year deal. So I don't know what the incentive structure looks like. But maybe Riq was expecting to get more on the market, and it ended up not being the case, and he feels like he can get more. Is this something the Seahawks should have matched, a 1-year, $15 million deal with as much cap space as they have? Or is this something, that you feel okay moving on from Turbo?
Well, I think there's 2 points here. The first point is he's not Mike McDonald's guy, right?
Yeah.
And so I think you have to seriously take that into consideration. Think about all the signings, at least a lot of them that have happened around free agency. It's all relational. Wan'Dale Robinson, wide receiver from New York Giants. Guess where he's at? Yep. Tennessee. Guess who's in Tennessee? Brian Daboll. Coached them in New York. You're seeing those types of matches happen throughout the entirety of free agency. So a lot of it is who you know, and less about what your talent is. If I identify with a guy and I'm familiar with his game and he knows my system and it fits, I'd rather have that guy, even though the other guy might be a little bit better. All right. So that's number one. Okay. The second thing is, I think that there were periods throughout the year with Riq Woolen, without I would say the last 2 seasons with Riq Woolen, where it just felt like a misfit at times. Inconsistency in play, inconsistency in personality in terms of the match, attitude, right? And so from that standpoint, I can see where the Seahawks say, look, we can afford $15 million for a year. That's not something we want at this particular time. We're looking for more stability, guys that we can keep on multiple years, and guys that we feel like fit, just the overall personality, maybe a little bit better. I think it's a little surprising, Anders. 1 year?
Yeah.
I mean, that has to tell you something about how front office personnel and scouts feel about Riq Woolen.
Yeah.
What's out on the streets about Riq Woolen, because they don't want to commit multiple years to this kid. Why? He's ultra talented. Rob Rang talked about it. His combine numbers, ultra talented, length, intangibles, all the things. Had his best season of his career last year, in my opinion. But you only want to sign him for 1 year, so you have to be concerned about the things that teams are concerned about in terms of Riq Woolen and his personality.
Yeah.
In order to get that long-term deal.
Yeah, I think let's have Rob speak on this, because I know he's as big of a Riq fan as there is out there. So, Rob, straight up, would you have done this deal? 1 year, $15 million for Riq Woolen?
Not if I was in charge of the Seattle Seahawks.
Okay.
Because as we just talked about, I think that he is not that clean fit in Mike McDonald's defense. At the same time, the scout in me is like, oh my goodness, you just got one of the elite athletes for, look, $15 million is an awful lot of money, obviously. And I do think that he has an opportunity here to splash for the Philadelphia Eagles. They've got two very good corners. They were all pro selections. Quinyon Mitchell, who I think is a true number one corner. And I think that Cooper DeJean is a heck of a football player as well. I think that Cooper DeJean is going to slide inside to that nickel spot, and that's going to allow Riq Woolen to play outside also. Philadelphia Eagles get pressure on quarterbacks. That's going to create some interception opportunities. Riq Woolen could have a monster season and be able to capitalize on this 1-year deal. I love the move for the Philadelphia Eagles. I just also think that it is a little bit of a kind of a roll of the dice because, as Turbo just mentioned, I mean, clearly, if NFL teams were unwilling to give him a multiple year deal, then there are concerns about him. And I think any Seahawks fan who was paying attention just strictly on the field, he was up and down. And then off the field, who knows what that type of that type of decision might be. So I'm excited for Riq Woolen because he's got an opportunity here. At the same time, I also think that that Seattle was wise in choosing Josh Jobe and the stability. It's just more consistency than that he provide rather than Riq Woolen, who is, my goodness, was up and down as it comes.
Okay, so Corbin, is there an element of the devil you know is better than the devil you don't in this situation, where you feel like you know what Riq Woolen is, there's some inconsistencies in his play, but he still had a very good season last year. To me, if I'm trying to repeat and be a Super Bowl champion again in 2026, 27, I guess, then I still would feel pretty comfortable slotting him in, adding into Josh Jobe. It doesn't put you in cap hell. It's just 1 year. So is that the case, or do you feel like they feel they can get even better than Riq Woolen in 2026?
Look, I think Riq Woolen is a good kid. I've always enjoyed my experiences getting to talk to him in the locker room. He's always been a really candid interview. And I don't think there's any off-field issues with this kid. I don't think that has anything to do with him not getting multi-year deals offered his way and having a lukewarm market. What is hurting him, though, and you could see it in the way that the Seahawks, and this is two coaching staffs, by the way. Pete Carroll benched Riq Woolen.
Yep.
Mike McDonald benched him. It has been discipline between the lines and in meeting rooms and things of that nature. My understanding is that they just didn't trust him week to week to have all of his assignments down. There were trust issues. That is the biggest thing. And look, if every other team in the league is saying, no way, we're giving a 2-year deal, and like the guy doesn't have like a criminal record or anything, like you immediately start saying, what is going on here? But I think he lost himself a lot of money with those couple mistakes he made in that NFC Championship game, that taunting penalty and then giving up a long touchdown. Like that is the last thing that a lot of teams remember, not the Super Bowl win. That's the last thing. But there's a track record there. This isn't the one and done thing. He's had 38 penalties in 4 years. Like there's discipline on the field related issues. There's trust issues. The Seahawks didn't feel that way about Josh Jobe. Mike McDonald has the utmost trust in Josh Jobe. And I was told today that Jobe and Woolen, if they were both offered the same amount of money, the Seahawks would have taken Josh Jobe every time. That's all you need to know. Mike McDonald wants his guys that he trusts. And let's face it, Riq Woolen gave up 12 touchdowns the last 2 years. Josh Jobe gave up 4. Like there are a lot of documented on-field reasons why Josh Jobe is a better football player. He is not the same ceiling, but potential is a dangerous word.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's well put by all of you. I probably feel the same way, to be honest. But yeah, it's just interesting that, I feel like if the Seahawks were not to bring back Riq, it would have been for, some other team gave him, stupid money. And the Seahawks just weren't going to do that. But that's not necessarily the case. So that's why I'm a little bit questioning, the
you
motivation.
must have to remember, Anders, like a 1-year deal, like whatever the salary is, that is directly the cap hit too. 1-year deals eat up more cap space.
That's true, but for only 1 year.
But it impacts now, and you have to remember JSN and Witherspoon, if they get extensions, part of the signing bonus is going to fall on the cap this year.
Yeah.
So those are all things you have to think about. You already
Yep.
have money in Job. You're going to use money on Witherspoon. You
Yep.
now have 3 receivers locked up. Like at some point you have to say, I can't do this. I'm out. And I think the Seahawks had already made that decision going into this from what I
and you guys mentioned other teams maybe not giving him multi-year deal. Maybe they offered him a multi-year deal, but it wasn't to the level that he wanted it to be, and he feels like a 1 year $15 million. Prove it, and then I can get more money next year. So like that could be a situation with him as well. Like you said, also it's a good situation for him to be in. I could totally see him just being a very, very good player in that Philadelphia Eagles team. So very interesting. It's also, of all of these 6 deals, the only one that is not a 3-year deal. They all ended up being 3 years for some reason. So I don't know if that's a normal thing. Like 3 years is a pretty standard amount for a lot of these guys in their first contracts. But let's go to the other side of the ball on offense. Kenneth Walker, Rashid Shaheed, 2 big names. If I were to tell you that those 2 guys would sign for almost identical contracts, there's a little bit of a difference, but very similar level of money, which one would you guys have chosen if you were to choose one or the other? That's going to be our discussion next segment here on the Seahawks Squad Show. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is, well, it's a lot. Trying to book an appointment, that's not the most convenient. Sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year's, you're going to get a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. TurboTax, your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in, meeting a real person, and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. Welcome back, Seahawks Squad Show. Anderson Hurst, Robert Turbin, Rob Brang, Corbin Smith with you guys. Today we're reacting to all of the deals regarding your, in some cases, former Seattle Seahawks that were heading on the open market in free agency. We just talked about Riq Woolen last segment, going to the Eagles, 1 year, $15 million. Kenneth Walker was the big ticket, and he was one of the first names to go off the board on Monday morning. So let's talk to RB1 Turbo regarding Kenneth Walker, because I think you were relatively, compared to everyone else, optimistic that he could be coming back to Seattle. That is not the case. Kenneth Walker signs a 3-year, $43 million deal with the Chiefs, just over $43 million. But he goes to the Chiefs, who have needed a running back for a long time. And the Seahawks are, as of now, left with Zach Charbonnet, who is going to be injured for the first about half of 2026. George Halani, Jacardier Wright, Kenny McIntosh. Am I missing one?
Cam Akers.
Cam Akers, yeah. And that's kind of Velus Jones. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah. So Turbo, thoughts on Walker leaving? Would you have done that deal to keep him in Seattle?
Man, this is the really tough one. Because I just think Kenneth Walker is such a dynamic player. What I appreciate is where he went. He went to a really good situation for him. Not just the fact that he'll be RB1, but you're a great organization, a championship-minded organization, an all-time great head coach and quarterback, and his offensive coordinator is one of the great all-time running back coaches in NFL history, to be honest with you, and Eric Bieniemy. Mm-hmm. And so you couldn't have asked, God to bless him with the perfect situation to leave Seattle. As much as I would have liked Seattle to bring him back, I think they made the right decision going with Shaheed instead.
Okay.
Because, Shaheed brings a dynamic to the offense that you just can't find all the time. He brings that Percy Harvin element that we had that is just a little different. He kind of strikes fear into the defense. because you don't know how he's going to get the ball. And if he does get the ball, he's got very, very dangerous speed. I think Kenneth Walker developed into that over this last year. But it's like when you get that accumulative GPA, at the end of high school or college, it's just like, you could do really, really well your senior year, but the freshman, sophomore, and junior years matter what you were doing in the classroom or not. And I think that played into Kenneth Walker's, into the Seahawks' interest in bringing back Kenneth Walker at that number. My fear is, and this will be my last point, my fear is that the Seahawks settle at the position, which is a dangerous space to get into. Remember when we traded Max Unger to get Jimmy Graham, and then all of a sudden we started kind of settling for just sort of guys at the offensive line, and the offensive line for a long time was just had this dysfunction.
Yep.
I fear that the running back spot may end up being in a similar area if it's not addressed properly. And that is the only fear that I have in terms of allowing Kenneth Walker III to walk. There's been some really good backs that have already been signed.
Yeah.
And so, how are you going to handle this spot? So overall, I'm happy for Kenneth Walker III, and I agree with the decision to let him go. I thought the Seahawks made the right decision choosing Rashid Shaheed instead, but I do fear this level of settle at the running back spot that will then lead into minimal production at the position.
That's an interesting thought, because I hadn't thought about it in that angle before. Rob, I know you mentioned at the top of the show you're a big Shaheed fan, so I'm curious, very similar money wise. Just because the Chiefs offered that much money for Kenneth Walker does not mean if the Seahawks offered that, he would have stayed here. That does not mean that at all. But if you were to choose between those two deals for Kenneth Walker and Rashid Shaheed, relatively similar money, do you think the Seahawks made the right choice in choosing Rashid Shaheed?
I do think that they made the right choice, but to say that I echo what Turbo just said does not give Turbo enough credit. I think that was as beautifully, articulately put as I've ever heard it. I've been fortunate enough to do some serious XM interviews myself. I've never been a co-host, and I see why this gentleman, or hear why this gentleman has had the opportunity to co-host. I think that he should be doing an awful lot more, because I thought that the way that he articulated that, as much of my excitement about Kenneth Walker III in Kansas City for the play caller and the play caller, the head coach, the quarterback, the organization, all of those things that he just articulated, I think is spot on. I also think that John Schneider and the Seahawks, frankly, just don't value running backs and paying them on second contracts as much as perhaps some other NFL teams do. I think that the fact that Schneider made the trade, the 4th and 5th round selection to acquire Rashid Shaheed, there's some skin in the game here.
Yeah.
And as Turbo mentioned, I mean, look, there's so many of the national viewers who didn't watch a lot of Seahawk football. They only saw the Super Bowl. They saw Kenneth Walker III explode on the biggest stage and have that spectacular performance. To Turbo's point, though, the cumulative GPA of Kenneth Walker III is not nearly as impressive as that final class, that big test in which he aced, of course. And so I think that the Seahawks were basically willing to kind of wash their hands of Kenneth Walker III, the durability concern, the fact that they feel like they can find backs. And this is not a terrific running back class, in my opinion, that's coming up. But I do think that the Seahawks feel that they can replace a running back a little bit easier than they can a guy that has the dynamic speed that Rashid Shaheed offers. I mean, just the explosive plays that he offered, even without any rushing or receiving touchdowns this year for the Seahawks, as we've talked about so many times, he still was able to basically turn the city into his own playground with those 3 big returns. And so, my goodness, if he just gets a couple a little bit more familiarity with Sam Darnold, then the sky is the limit for him, especially with defenses focusing so much of their attention on Jackson Smith and Jigba, obviously. So I do think that Seattle made this smart move. But again, I would echo number 22's thoughts here, and that I worry that Seattle is going to have kind of just a guy at the running back position instead of a back who has the power to be able to bowl through would-be tacklers, certainly the speed to break away from them. And I'm very curious to see how Kansas City utilizes Kenneth Walker III a little bit more as a receiver out of the backfield. I always thought that was something that Seattle didn't do enough of.
Yep.
And so I think that there's a chance, as I mentioned before, with Riq Woolen, that he could splash in Philadelphia. My goodness, Kenneth Walker III could be a superstar with Patrick Mahomes handing him off the ball.
Okay, so Corbin, I want to jump off on that last point that Rob made there with you. To me, the one worry I had about this decision is that it would be more difficult to fill the running back spot than it would be the second or third wide receiver spot, however you feel about Rashid Shaheed. So I'm going to ask you, which one is easier to supplement? Is it that kind of RB1, especially now with Zach Charbonnet out for half the year? And then which one is more important to fill? So which one is easier to fill and which one's more important to fill when you're making this decision?
As a running back purist, I would love to say that the running back position is the one that's harder to replace, but that is not the reality 95% of the time. If Rashid Shaheed was just a return man and he had not, he's never had a dynamic 1,000-yard season, but
Sure.
He's also been a guy that has been a consistent home run threat up until this year that had a lot of long touchdown catches and averaged over 20 yards per reception one season. He is an explosive play waiting to happen anytime he touches the football on offense and special teams. And he's perfect for the offense they're running. Brian Fleury's going to run the same style offense. This is the perfect system for Rashid Shaheed, and he loved playing in Seattle. He wanted to stay. I think the price points are close enough there. If this would have been 20, 21 million per year for Shaheed, I'm spending that 15 million on Ken Walker. Okay. But because it was this close, I just think there's more value in having a receiver that's also a return man. And I think it's harder to find a guy that can do all 3 of those things. When you add in the running game element too, there's a reason there aren't very many Percy Harvin type players in the National Football League and why teams covet guys like that.
Yes.
Because there's not very many of them. And I'm with Rob. Last year was a legendary running back draft class. That might have been the best I've ever seen in terms of overall depth and talent. This year's class is not even close, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad class. And I think Seattle can get somebody on day 2, whether it's Mike Washington Jr. Out of Arkansas. I think he's somebody that would make a lot of sense for them. Even on day 3, I think there's a few guys. Robert Henry from UTSA is a guy that I really like. That he didn't run near as well as I thought he was going to the combine, but on film he runs fast and he's an explosive playmaker. There are guys you can get in this draft, but I think they absolutely have got to get somebody like a Rashad White. Or I was talking to Rob about this in our Locked On Seahawks. I'm seeing what Najee Harris's injury situation looks like. Where is he at coming back from his Achilles? Because before that injury, 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons, he's more of a punisher. He can catch the football, though. I then go get me a speedy receiver to complement, or a speedy running back that can catch the ball to complement him in the draft. And I think there are guys they could get with their picks they have. That to me is, and let's not discount George Halani. I think George Halani could be ready for a bigger stake in the running back room. He's a talented young man. So I'm not worried they're going to settle there. I understand the reservations there, but I still think Seattle is going to make the moves they need to find the guys that fit this scheme.
Brian Robinson Jr. also still available. Was under Brian Fleury last year in San Francisco. So that's the familiarity that we were talking about as well. So, yeah, to me, I guess I'll throw this back at you, Rob, our draft expert. Is running back deeper than wide receiver? If we're just talking draft to supplement this, I know you have the special teams element with Rashid Shaheed, but I am if you were going to move on from him, I'm relying on the punt returning of Torrey Horton as well. And kind of, if giving and taking, right? If you're going to get a number 1 running back, And if you were to bring back Kenneth Walker, then you'd be, giving up a little bit on the special teams game as well. So it's a give and a take there. But in terms of this draft overall, is there a bigger depth in the running back position or the wide receiver position for Seattle? Because now, theoretically, you don't have to address wide receiver now. You feel pretty good about your wide receiver room. Bringing back Shaheed, you got Cooper Kupp, you got Torrey Horton, you got JSN. Hopefully they figure something out with Jake Bobo, but you definitely have to address the running back now in the draft. So which one of those would have been easier to address, I guess, is my question.
I think easier, and just in terms of numbers, receiver is a much deeper class. However, banking on a rookie to be able to come in and be an immediate difference maker, I think that you always want to go with running backs.
Okay.
I mean, it's just I don't want to say that it's an easier position because I've never played a running back in my life, never played a receiver in my life. But at the same time, I think that just is just the nature of the position that some of the elite athletes from kindergarten on gravitate to running back, and so therefore I do think that the Seahawks feel more confident that Corbin mentioned a name, Mike Washington Jr. from Arkansas, as a player that I'm very high. I think that he'd be a terrific fit in Seattle's offense. The other backs I really like in this class that I think will be available on day 2, potentially Jadarian Price. He might be a number 32 overall kind of a guy from Notre Dame. Emmett Johnson from Nebraska is another one. And then the local football fans out there, Jonah Coleman from the University of Washington is getting slept on from a national perspective. And of course, John Schneider loves to find players that nobody is talking about and winds up helping them become superstars, like the aforementioned George Helani, who of course is an undrafted free agent out of the West that could himself wind up being in a position to be very successful this upcoming season.
Yeah. Turbo, last thought. I know I loved your cumulative GPA, analogy there. And it's a very good one, honestly. So is that something that you think John Schneider was kind of hesitant on? Like, we put you had injury issues your second and third years. Maybe there was this almost thought like, I don't want a Chris Carson situation to happen again, where he has 2 really, really good years. We give you a contract and then he only plays 4 games on that contract. And it's like, okay, well, what are we doing here? So I know it's again, the devaluing of the running back position as a former running back probably hurts you. But do you think that was in John Schneider's mind when he was hesitant to kind of give him that money?
Absolutely. 100%. It's his job, actually, to take those things into consideration. How many times he's been injured, when those injuries were, how often, those injuries are cured. Then you got to think about the tape, like we talked about how Kenneth Walker III had a hell of a year this year. But we also talked, I remember being on this show early on in the season. We're like, what is Kenneth Walker looking at out there?
Yep.
And so there's inconsistencies with vision and timing and pace and decision-making, and all of those things are sort of added up in terms of making a tough decision like that on K9.
Yeah, it's the way you talk about that reminds me a lot of the conversation surrounding Riq Woolen as well. So again, I think both John Schneider and now Mike McDonald are valuing consistent guys who know exactly what they're going to bring every single time, whether it's on offense or defense. And I think you could definitely say that about Josh Jobe and Rashid Shaheed. All right. Let's flip back to defense. Boye Mafe and Josh Jobe and Kobe Bryant are the other 3 that we have yet to talk about. We talked a little Josh Jobe, so let's focus on Boye and Kobe Bryant a little bit. Are those, any sort of reservations? I think Boye was a almost foregone conclusion going into free agency that he was going to move on. Kobe Bryant was a bit of a surprise to me. That they didn't try and bring him back, or at least they tried, I guess, but they didn't end up being successful in doing that. So we'll chat about the other 3 defensive players here on the Seahawks Squad Show as we're breaking down all the free agents that are staying or going for your Seattle Seahawks. College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want, rivalry games, ranked matchup, whatever you want. You can mix spreads, totals, and player props to match how you see the slate playing out. Then you can apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. Just look at the odds around your team if they are in season. Go safe, go bold, ride with the team that you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Just head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Welcome back, Seahawks Squad Show. Anderson Hurst, Robert Turbin, Rob Rang, Corbin Smith with you. We're reacting to all of the deals regarding your, in some cases, former Seattle Seahawks in free agency in these first couple days. All 6 of the big names are off the board. Let's get back to defense. Boye Mafe, quick thought. Corbin, I'm going to start with you this time. Is there any reservations with letting him walk? I feel like $20 million, 3-year, $60 million deal total to go to the Bengals. It feels like that's a little too much, and John Schneider had a pretty easy time in his head justifying not matching that. But what are your thoughts behind Boye Mafe now becoming a Cincinnati Bengal?
Yeah, I don't think John Schneider even considered matching that. My understanding was $9 or $10 million a year is what they were looking at potentially to bring him back. And the numbers bear that out. I mean, he had that breakout year his sophomore season. And look, I don't subscribe to sacks being the only thing that matters with pass rushers. And I do think pass rush win rate is an important statistic because it tells me about the consistency of a guy winning against their opposing blocker. However, that the problem that I had with Boye Mafe this year is he had 4 quarterback hits. And, you know, Sam Darnold was learning how to beat ghosts. And I think that Boye Mafe was becoming one much of the season. Like there was way too many games where he went disappear mode. Like there were a lot of games I'm like, man, I didn't even know 53 suited up. Like he disappeared for long stretches. And some of it is the amount of talent around him. You only can have so many guys making plays. I get that. He had a little bit of a reduction in his workload because of DeMarcus Lawrence coming in and becoming a starter. But I just thought there were way too many long stretches where he just was kind of absent and he just wasn't making impact plays. And I think John Schneider and this front office felt that way too. They felt he was a much more replaceable player than a lot of these other free agents they had. So my understanding is they basically they gave an offer, but then we're moving on. And there wasn't really any talk at that point. And Cincinnati, you know, they're without Trey Hendrickson now. They're looking for any pass rushing help they can get. Desperate teams are going to throw money, and John Schneider doesn't need to do that. So to me, this was the easiest decision the Seahawks had in terms of letting somebody go. And I think Mafe is a good player. He could potentially, you know, have a very, very good 3-year run in Cincinnati in a system maybe that accentuates his talents a little bit more. But the consistency was not there, especially this year. The production was not there, quite frankly, for the Seahawks to pay that kind of money anywhere close to that.
Yeah, Rob, good move. Moving on from Boye Mafe.
I think that it was an understandable move. I mean, I'd love to have had Boye Mafe speed for the Seahawks here. But at the same time, I don't think that he was going to beat out DeMarcus Lawrence, assuming he returns. Uchenna Nwosu, assuming he returns. And I don't believe that he would have beaten out Derek Hall. It's kind of similar conversation, Derek Hall and Boye Mafe conversations, what we had earlier at the cornerback spot with Riq Woolen and Josh Jobe. I just think that Josh Jobe's a better fit in Mike Macdonald's system. I think that Derek Hall is a better fit in Mike Macdonald's system, where it's more about setting the edge in the running game than it is about just pinning your ears back and gaining the pressure. As Corbin said, I think that Boye Mafe could have, you know, pretty good production for the Cincinnati Bengals, but averaging $20 million. I just think that was a relatively easy decision for the Seahawks. I'd be stunned if Seattle doesn't take advantage of what I consider to be the strength of the 2026 NFL draft. It's not that I think that there are a bunch of, you know, Nick Bosa type edge rushers in this draft class, but I do think that there is a lot of depth, a lot of guys that fit in with what Seattle's looking for. I personally like, you know, a TJ Parker or a Gabe Akis, you know, a Malachi Lawrence, a Derek Moore, a R. Mason Thomas. There's a lot of edge rushers I think should be in play anywhere between number 32 overall and number 64 overall. And I say between those because if Seattle trades back, I think that will be a position that they look to bring in some youth. But at the same time, again, I think this is where it's almost like the Golden Tate situation. I remember when Turbo and the rest of the Seahawks won that Super Bowl, all those years ago, and Golden Tate got the splashy payday from the Detroit Lions. It was like, hey, cool. You're a really good player. You'd love to have you back, but at the same time, somebody just paid you an awful lot of money. And I think that Seattle made the right decision then to let Golden Tate walk away rather than trying to match. Same thing here with Boye Mafe.
Yeah, Turbo, do you feel okay about losing Mafe, especially considering the question marks regarding DeMarcus Lawrence? I even hesitate to say that kind of phrase, him supposedly considering retirement, but where do you feel the Seahawks are at edge now that Boye Mafe is no longer Seattle Seahawk?
Yeah. The thing that you have to keep in mind with John Schneider and his team of folks who are, working together and evaluating players and helping make these tough decisions is, all right, can we draft a guy and develop him to be as good as Boye Mafe or better? Yeah. And the answer is yes to that question. And if the answer is yes to that question, you'll typically see guys go.
Yeah.
And I think in this situation, that's where they're at. I think the Seahawks believe that they can draft a guy who maybe he won't be as good as Boye Mafe in the beginning.
Yeah.
But over the course of a year or two, he can develop to be just as good as Boye or maybe even better, and they save a ton of money on the salary cap. And that's a lot of the ways these moves are made.
Yeah, it just feels like with a lot of these players, Boye Mafe included, it's less of a we don't want to bring you back situation and more of a it's just the right price. And this one, I think Corbin put it correctly, that's about as like, I don't want to say easy of a decision to make, but it is with all these other deals, right? You could make an argument for bringing Riq back. You can make an argument for bringing K9 back. Job, you did bring back. We'll talk about Kobe Bryant here in a second, but Boye Mafe, $20 million a year is a lot for a guy that's, a lot of the pressure came from inside anyway during this team, for this team with the Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy as well. So I think that, especially with the strength of the draft, which Rob Rang just mentioned there, that's going to be something to watch for as well. Corbin, where do you pivot in terms of, do you feel good about edge where it's at right now, or do you feel like you need to address that in the draft, or there was a big deal that just kind of fell through? Do you think the Seahawks are kicking the tires on Max Crosby?
Yeah, look, we've talked about that. I thought we were done talking about the Max Crosby sweepstakes. And then I was just seeing some of the reports coming out. There's a couple of unnamed GMs that are saying they're calling BS on Baltimore here. So something weird happened in this entire process. But John Schneider is, we talked about this earlier, him and Howie Roseman to me are the most opportunistic general managers in the league and the most successful at being opportunistic. He has been smitten with Max Crosby for years. So I am not going to sit here and try to give Seahawks fans reason to think it's going to happen. But it is more than a Dumb and Dumber 1 in a million thing too. Like John Schneider, I guarantee is calling, maybe not the Raiders directly, but he's maybe calling Baltimore or something like, I just kind of want to know what's going on here. And the price is not going to be near as high. The Raiders can't expect to get 2 firsts back now with this. I mean, this mucks a lot of things up for them. If it ends up being a first and a third, John Schneider might be doing cartwheels trying to get over to the phone to finish that trade-off. Like, we'll have to see. But Jonathan Grenard is the other name that I've been throwing out. Minnesota is fielding offers. He's coming off an injury too, but he is around the same age. He's a year removed from 2 straight double-digit sack seasons. He's an outstanding run defender. Sets a firm edge. So both those guys are options. And, oh, by the way, there's still some pretty good guys in free agency that are available as well. Trey Hendrickson, we'll see. Baltimore might end up signing him now with the money that they have. But you've still got him out there. If you want to go veterans, Cam Jordan had 10 sacks last year. He's an ageless wonder. He can still play. Von Miller had 9 sacks. I mean, Arnold Ebiketie is a guy they liked more than Mafe in the draft process. He's unsigned. Like, there are options there. If Seattle wants to sign one and then draft one, they can double dip and they'll be in good shape with or without DeMarcus Lawrence coming back.
Yeah, I feel pretty similarly. And the thing regarding Max Crosby is I love watching him play, but he's played through a lot of injuries. So I'm not saying that this whole report about failing the physical and everything and then having the deal fall through isn't BS, but it is kind of, there's a few red flags in there. He's played the most snaps out of any other edge rusher since 2019, the only one to be over 6,000. So he's played a lot of football. I wonder what the wear and tear looks like there, but he's a hell of a player. So it'd be almost worth kind of, having that risk on, especially when you're picking 32nd in the first round versus, if you were picking higher up in the draft. So, okay, let's last quick one here. Kobe Bryant. We'll talk about him on the other side of the break here, because this was one, I think, if I were to be the most surprised, I thought there was a very good chance the Seahawks were going to be bringing back Kobe Bryant, especially if they weren't going to be bringing back Riq Woolen. They do get Josh Jobe done, as we talked about earlier, but Kobe Bryant's no longer a Seahawk. This is a guy that they've raved about for a long time. I wonder if this is because the deal itself, I feel like it was a little bit more, but you could have, made sense of it. 3 years, $40 million with the Bears. I'm going to ask these guys what they think regarding Kobe Bryant, if they're a little surprised, if they feel okay about the secondary, or if that is another position that you need to address. With only 4 picks, you can't address every position, obviously. So yeah, Turbo, we'll get to you right after the break here. Just making sure everyone can get their sponsorships in, because we got to pay the bills here in the Locked On Seahawks Squad show. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Seahawks Squad show. Anderson Hurst, Robert Turbin, Rob Rang, Corbin Smith. Turbo, you put your hand up there and to mention something with Kobe Bryant there. What do you got to say?
No, it was actually, I just want to make one quick comment in terms of the Max Crosby thing.
Sure, go ahead.
I just a side note, Max Crosby did go on a couple platforms and express his love and admiration for the Raiders, and being a Raider for life. Ravens are a very proud organization. Could be part of the reason there. Could be part of the reason there.
Turbo, are you a conspiracy theorist?
Maybe.
Because I normally would not say that I am one, but hear me out, guys. This
could be
pertains
something
to the
there.
Seahawks. This fits with the Seahawks Squad show.
Okay.
Trey Hendrickson has not signed yet. I think a lot of people expected that was going to be one of those fast off the shelf deals on Monday, and he still has not signed with anybody. Suddenly, literally 10 minutes before this Max Crosby news comes out, there's some rumors that the Ravens are interested in Hendrickson, and the timeline does not add up, guys. Like, it makes me wonder, like, did the Ravens oh wait, he's not getting the money that we thought he was going to get. We don't want to trade 2 first-round picks for Max Crosby. We can go get Trey Hendrickson without giving up first-round picks for. I'm sorry, but I think that's what the GMs are talking about. Something is fishy. Something smells bad in the water, guys. And the Seahawks might get one of these guys if it ends up playing out a certain way. But something is stinky in the water. I will say that.
Oh yeah.
I love it. This is what the NFL offseason brings, is this drama. I absolutely love it. But,
I don't think it's drama. I am 90%. I am 90% convinced that's what's going on right now.
Okay.
I think Baltimore is. They're like, hell no, we're not giving up 2 firsts if we can get Hendrickson for $20 million a year for Boye Mafe money. Let's do it, guys. The process is stinky though, man. Good luck to Baltimore getting to trade with anybody from now on. There are going to be a lot of teams that are going to say you're on our no call list.
Yeah, that's a good point. Rob, since you haven't mentioned anything in this segment, let's go to you for Kobe Bryant reaction. 3 years, $40 million with the Bears. Not only does he leave your team, he goes to an NFC rival who is trying to get over the hump themselves. So how do you feel about losing? And you mentioned it yourself. You have a lot of playmakers here. You could make an argument, not saying that you will make this argument, but you could make an argument that this will be the guy you miss the most from the Mike Macdonald scheme. He loved him last year, even though he wasn't a Macdonald acquisition. This was one of those guys that he was definitely a Macdonald player. So, what are your thoughts on Kobe Bryant no longer being a Seahawk?
Well, as you said, Anders, I mean, Kobe Bryant was not a Mike Macdonald acquisition, but I thought that he really kind of spread his wings, so to speak, under Mike Macdonald at the safety position. I thought that Kobe Bryant early in the season missed a fair number of tackles. And I thought, wow, is this actually going to work out? Because I've been a big Tayakata fan for a long time. And that was one of the reasons why I thought that Seattle maybe ultimately decide, no, we cannot match this deal that the Chicago Bears are giving Kobe Bryant. As you said, 3 years, $40 million. I think that Seattle feels that Tayakata is a good player, maybe not quite to Kobe Bryant's potential, but still a very good player. And so I thought that the Kobe Bryant's improvement as open field tackler, he's always shown the ball skills. I mean, the guy punches out and creates fumbles. He has been an interceptor. Going back to his time at Cincinnati, where he was the Thorpe Award winner, not Sauce Gardner, not Brian Cook. He's always been that kind of a guy. So I think that the Seahawks wanted to bring him back. And last time I spoke to you, sir, I mean, I kind of was pounding the table. I thought that was the guy that the Seattle might miss the most. And I do think that you can make an argument for that. Again, Tayakata and the fact that this is a good draft class, in my opinion, at safety, I think that kind of lessens those concerns. But I also think that an underrated element, we just talked about, like, with Max Crosby and the conspiracy theories here, that I think the fact that the Raiders kind of like Max Crosby likes being a member of the Raiders. I think that there's also some loyalty to Julian Love, and Seattle brought in Julian Love and signed him to a 3-year, $33 million deal. I think it would be difficult maybe to swallow the idea that Kobe Bryant's a better player than a former All-Pro Pro Bowler in Julian Love. And so if you're going to give him a 3-year, $40 million deal, now, obviously, Julian Love was injured a fair amount last year. Maybe you can make that argument. Kobe Bryant's a younger player, but I do think it's an awful lot of assets that you are suddenly allocating to the safety position. So that's my kind of long-winded way of saying that I think that Kobe Bryant will be missed. Really good football player. I think that Seattle is probably uniquely suited to be able to handle the loss of Kobe Bryant. The Chicago Bears are looking, honestly, to try to upgrade their situation, their safety. Jaquan Brisker is currently a free agent, but he's more of a downhill run stuffer rather than the all-around ball hawk that is Kobe Bryant. I think Seattle's going to miss him, but at the same time, I think that the money was just a little bit too rich for the Seahawks to justify paying him that type of cash.
Corbin, is Tayakata just as good as Kobe Bryant? Can he fill that role that Kobe did for a lot of last year?
Look, I this is not taking any shots at anybody. I'm not going to sit here and say Tayakata is going to be as good as Kobe Bryant, but I think they are very close. I think they're a little different players stylistically. Okada's actually the better athlete by a fairly significant margin. I think Kobe's got the ball skills over him. I think blitzing Tayakata has, and tackling wise, even though Bryant got better, Okada was as good of an open field tackler as Seattle had on the roster last year. And he costs $1 million. Like, that's the other thing. You have to look at bang for your buck. I don't think there's much of a difference. I think Kobe Bryant is the better player, but I don't think there's a huge gap between those two guys. $13 million per year versus $1 million per year. And you're going to have that flexibility probably for 2 more years with Tayakata. To me, I was told 10 million, 11 at most is where the Seahawks were going for Bryant. They were trying to hash this out Sunday night, and Kobe Bryant felt like he was going to get more on the open market, and he did. And the Seahawks, just 40 million was too rich. John Schneider knows when to bow out, and Tayakata made that decision easier for them.
So, Turbo, you talked about settling earlier in the episode at the running back position. Now we're looking at the secondary. You lost Riq Woolen, and Kobe Bryant. You still have Spoon. You expect an extension to get done there. Obviously, Nick Eamon-Warry as well. You bring back Josh Jobe. So you keep some pieces, but are you worried about one of the absolute strengths of this team being the depth of the secondary, being able to fill in with those guys and losing two key pieces to that for 2026?
I'm not worried about that at all.
Okay.
I thought Rob made a couple great points. The first one being Julian Love is still on the team.
Yep.
And when you think about how he played when he returned from injury, I was actually shocked at how good he played when he came back from his injury. I mean, he was a standout player for the secondary on defense. That's number one. Number two, I think you'll be able to fulfill your depth in the draft at safety. And again, it goes back to, okay, can we draft a guy who maybe isn't as good as Kobe Bryant now, but in a year or two will be or better? Yeah. And we've saved millions of dollars doing so.
Draft and develop.
Exactly. The last thing I love what Rob Rang said, he said Kobe Bryant is a really good player. Here's the thing, what happens with these negotiations. If a general manager or decision maker is going to go over budget for a player, really good's not good enough. Mm-hmm. You have to be a difference maker. And so let's ask the question, Kobe Bryant, is he a really good player or is he a difference maker? The truth is, it's what Rob said. He's a really good player. You can find really good players in a lot of different places in the NFL. It's hard to find the difference makers. Kobe Bryant, not quite in that category at this particular time in his career. So I thought the Seahawks, right to move on. I don't think they're going to miss much there, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Andrew's going to want to punch me in the face, but this is a really good safety draft. I know they only have 4
We only have 4 picks, guys. We can't address every position.
You can get a really good safety in the second and third round. And I one of the guys I'm slamming for the table for, I'm not always a subscriber to Get College Teammates or whatever, but Jalen Kilgore would be such a fun piece to link back up with Nick Eamon-Warry. Those two guys were studs together in South Carolina. He's a ball hawk. He hits people. Probably an early day 2, late second round caliber guy. I could throw other names out there, but again, John Schneider is playing chess while a lot of these guys are playing checkers. He's going to make more than 4 picks in April. Let's be realistic. He is not picking just 4 guys. So they're going to find a way to plug some of these holes.
All right. And combining what Turbo was saying, talking about what Rob was saying, and then adding in what Corbin said regarding, the good player versus great player, right? And the difference maker. You're not gonna all of these deals that they're adding, the extensions and everything, those are for the difference makers, right? That's for the Spoons. That's for the Nick Eamon-Warrys. That's for the JSNs, right? That they're going to be, having to deal with. And they're trying to save that for these next few years. And right now, as of today on, March 10th, 2026, the Seattle Seahawks have the lowest dead cap number in the entire NFL at just over $500,000. I want to say they are very prudent in keeping themselves in a good spot to have long-term success here. So it's just the reality, like we've all talked about all episode, that this is what happens when you have a really good team. You draft and develop really, really well. You can do it again, first of all. Second of all, the guys that you draft and develop, you're not going to keep all of them, right? So other teams are going to come and pay good money for them, and they're going to, they're going to get theirs. But and when you have one of those really, really good players, maybe not difference makers, it's better to have it, like Corbin said, at $1 million versus $13 million, right? So that's where that difference comes into play. So I think in general, I'm not going to speak for all you. I'll give you guys your closing statements here in a second. But in general, I feel like we feel as a group that John Schneider, in almost every situation, made the right decision here. Let's have your closing statement first. Overall, how do you feel about, bringing back 2 of the 6 guys, but where the Seahawks are headed, looking to repeat in 2026.
Gentlemen, the defense rests. I mean, that's the thing. It's like closing statements. I mean,
Yeah.
I always dreamed of being smart enough to be a lawyer someday. So yeah, I just think
What
we're talking
happened?
about the Super Bowl champion, and I just think that they did a great job of basically checking the boxes with the most important players, bringing them back at a salary that is, maybe pushing the boundaries, but understandable, and yet put themselves in a position to attack this draft. And I would agree with what Corbin said a moment ago. I think it's very likely that the Seahawks are going to be trading back, acquiring more selections, and attacking this draft class that is rich in several of the position groups: edge rusher, running back, safety, even guard, that are arguably Seattle's biggest areas of concern.
Turbo, closing statement.
Yeah, man. Look, I really respect the way that John Schneider does business. Someone sent me a clip of John at the podium, and he made that joke about Kenneth Walker III trying to negotiate with him just 5 minutes ago, and that's just him, man. He's just got this great personality. I thought that way, he's just joking around and he's making it loose and it's fun. And even though these guys, you're not able to sign everybody back, the relationships, I'm sure he wants to sustain. Those things are still there for him, and it's important. And I hope those guys that are departing understand that this is not a personal attack on you as a ball player. This is just an organization that has to make tough decisions with their finance, and trying to do the best that they can in terms of navigating that. And so when you look at it in totality, I think that the Seahawks put themselves in the best situation to move forward.
Corbin, closing statement.
Yeah, the last thing I'm going to say on the great player versus difference maker discussion, I think it is fluid by team too. But, Boye Mafe was not going to be a difference maker on this defense with the other pieces they had. He could very well be a difference maker. I mean, the Bengals, their defense was good. Good God, it was horrible last year. Like that was one of the worst defenses that I've seen in the last 15 years. They need any help they can get. Boye Mafe is probably going to look like Reggie White out there at some points with what they've got. So to me, difference maker is kind of a fluid term in the sense that Kobe Bryant in Chicago could be the same thing. He could be a true difference maker in Chicago, whereas he's just another really good player in Seattle because of all those studs that they have around him. This is the chance to kind of carve out. Now, flip side there, if you don't live up to that billing, suddenly that contract doesn't look like a good value. And we see that a lot in the NFL with players as well. So buy really good players, looking for them to be difference makers at your own peril.
Yeah.
By the way,
go ahead.
I was going to say, by the way, Anders, you made a point earlier about 3-year deals. It's actually a nice balance for both sides, because for the player, it's like, okay, if I have a really, really dominant year, I might be able to come back to the table, or a second year, for that matter. I can come back to the table earlier instead of signing a 4 or 5 year deal, where now I'm older and it becomes much more difficult to negotiate, that third contract. And it's the same for the team.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, 3-year deal, 3-year deal is great, because in 2 years, if he ain't ball, if he's not playing up to par, then we can move on without taking like a huge cap. Usually that last year is not guaranteed, so you don't really take much of a hit to your cap. So that 3-year, that's why you're seeing a lot of that, because it's a good actual balance for both sides.
Yeah. And John and then Mike, we trust, guys, it seems like here. And, there is a cautionary tale to having faith in the way you do things, right? You have these good players, but you are almost kind of betting on the unknown more than you are with these good players. But in the long run, if you trust kind of your process, trust the process, that the way you do things is going to constantly churn out talent, which it has in the last 3 or 4 years, then I think eventually it's going to, find a way to work itself out, which in most cases, John Schneider has literally built 2 completely different Super Bowl champion winning rosters. There was not a single player that was on the 2026 Super Bowl champion that was on the 2014 Super Bowl champion team. So he's done it twice. He can do it again. And hopefully this time we maybe get a couple more after the first one. But that's it for this episode of the Seahawks Squad Show. Appreciate all y'all hanging out with us today. We'll talk on probably Friday with another episode, kind of moving on from these 6 guys and, where do they pivot to? What names are you looking for in the draft? What positions do you think are the biggest of need? Maybe a couple other free agents that are still available out there. We'll kind of turn the page, so to speak, in the next episode of the Seahawks Squad Show. We'll do that a little bit later this week, but I appreciate Turbo, Rob Rang, Corbin Smith for hopping on with me today. We feel pretty good about where the Seahawks are. I know it's weird to think about when you lose 4 key pieces and you bring back 2 without making any major additions, but we feel pretty good about where the Seahawks are at right now. So let's keep it going. Go Hawks. We'll talk to you guys next time.